Welcome to Ruffing Past, the show where I talk football, miscellaneous stuff, and mostly football. I'm your host, Sam Ruffing. The NFL Draft has concluded round one with many great picks, surprising picks, rises, falls, and great trades. But the biggest news over yesterday is that Lamar Jackson has finally reached a contract agreement with the Baltimore Ravens worth $260 million, with $180 million, $85 million guaranteed. This is great for Baltimore, as this contract A needed to happen, and B, they got extremely lucky that it did happen at such a low price. I mean, if this contract did not get signed by Baltimore, if they somehow lost Lamar Jackson to either A, holding out, or B, he was, signed by another team and they got 2 first-round picks, I think there would have been some firings in Baltimore starting next year. John Harbaugh has only won 2 playoff games since winning the Super Bowl back in 2012. That's been, the 2014 playoffs, he won a wild card against the Steelers. And obviously, 2020 playoffs, he beat the Tennessee Titans with Lamar Jackson. But other than that, John Harbaugh has an 4-8 record without Lamar Jackson. A lot of losing seasons with Joe Flacco. His teams are constantly blowing big games, like they blew an 18-point lead with Lamar Jackson last year. They lost in their first playoff game in 2019 despite having MVP Lamar Jackson. Stuff like that. Baltimore fans are already mad at him for keeping Greg Roman as long as they did. I mean, people are starting to think that maybe he should be out of there. And yeah, I don't think it's gonna. And the only reason he hasn't been fired yet is because Lamar Jackson has, come in and won 70% of his games as a starter. He's won an MVP. He's won a playoff game and practically saved John Harbaugh's job ever since he started. If that did not happen, if they lost Lamar Jackson, what was Baltimore going to do? Start Tyler Huntley? I don't even think they have Tyler Huntley anymore. What are they going to do? They're going to draft Will Levis because, he was the only quarterback available and hope that he develops quickly. They're going to trade for a guy, like make a push for Aaron Rodgers somehow, even though it would have been too late. Like, what were they going to try and do? Who were they going to sign? Because whoever they signed was not going to win, Lamar Jackson levels of games. I mean, Tyler Huntley, when he took over the team last year, they were the first in the division. By the end of it, they were a wild card team who lost to Cincinnati. And they would have won that game if Lamar Jackson was starting, I'll tell you that much. But man, did the Baltimore Ravens luck into this, because they had the opportunity to pay Lamar Jackson early. They had all the time in the world. I mean, in 2022, when Deshaun Watson was traded to Cleveland and signed to that ridiculous deal from, an already ridiculous trade, Baltimore could have signed Lamar up for a, $250 million deal. Probably only $150 million guaranteed was needed because, Aaron Rodgers was just paid. And Josh Allen, pretty similar to Lamar Jackson because they're both from the same draft class and they're obviously top quarterbacks in the NFL, was paid himself that much, pretty much. He was paid $268 million, $150 million guaranteed. Could have paid Lamar Jackson around the same. But for some reason, whatever reason, they decided to wait, even though he's been nothing but a great quarterback for you. And they almost paid the price of $240 million guaranteed or something like that. I'm just saying, this is why you should pay him early. Get the contract done. Don't have to worry about people like Jimmy Haslam signing ridiculous contracts and giving Lamar Jackson ideas. So congratulations, Baltimore. Give him some weapons besides OBJ, maybe like DeAndre Hopkins. And actually succeed. Keep him upright. Hopefully your offense will be better without, Greg Roman. Moving on, the Carolina Panthers selected with the first overall pick Bryce Young, quarterback from Alabama. And this was the right pick. You know, there are teams in the NFL who just have to admit that things aren't going well. They're not going to get better. They're going to have to blow it up and restart. And there were two quarterbacks selected this year that have finally signified that teams are ready to, go through the long, arduous process of rebuilding. I mean, Carolina Panthers, Indianapolis Colts. Two teams who probably should have done this a lot earlier, but haven't. And for Carolina's in Carolina's situation, when they had hired Matt Rule, they just cut bait with Cam Newton. They probably should have, instead of signing Teddy Bridgewater and hoping that he's great, which, trust me, I can tell you, he's not great. I'm a Broncos fan. Dang it, why did we sign Teddy Bridgewater? Anyways, they should have just drafted a quarterback, taken the L, develop him for a few years, and you wouldn't have had to be in this position. But they were in this position, and at least they're finally making the right decision after, trading for guys like Sam Darnold and Baker Mayfield, guys who may work, may not work, who didn't work at previous places. Like, the odds of them panning out were never going to be good. It was probably never going to work. So they took the medicine. They traded a lot of picks to move up and select, Bryce Young. And when you're at the first overall pick, what's interesting is that you can't be too risky. You see, Bryce Young may not have the greatest arm size, and he might not be the biggest, quarterback ever, but he can move. He's got a high ceiling, a high floor. He's very pro ready. So obviously, if you're the Carolina Panthers, you couldn't gamble around with a guy like Will Levis, with a guy like Anthony Richardson. You had to remain course. And they thankfully made the right move. Because, if you have the first overall pick and you're drafting a quarterback, you can't just be like, we're going to take a massive swing. Because if that goes wrong, you're set back for years and years. And it's very interesting because, obviously the Jaguars in 2021 were not going to take a guy like Trey Lance. Even though his talent's immense, he was very raw. He was very raw. He played in the FCS. He only played 1 year of college. Obviously, Trevor Lawrence is one of the best quarterback prospects of all time, so that helps. But he's also the most pro-ready. And that was the right pick there, because you couldn't just mess around, because if you failed that pick, well, shoot, you're stuck again. Because then you have to think, well, maybe is it, maybe is not it. Now, a team that's picking later, like a few picks later, they have room to gamble. The 49ers that year, they moved up, traded 2 draft picks to Miami to move up to select Trey Lance, and it worked out for him. It really worked out. It didn't work out for him, but you know what? It was also, they had room to gamble because it was the 3rd overall pick. They already have Jimmy Garoppolo. What was going to go wrong? They have a great offensive coach, and so you can take big swings because he's not the first overall pick. There's not as much pressure to, succeed and perform. And I think that's what the Colts just did by drafting Anthony Richardson 4th overall, which I think is a great move because, if it pans out, Anthony Richardson obviously has immense talent. He's a great runner. He's got a huge arm. He's got some accuracy issues and some play issues, but they have a great offensive coach, at least it seems like, in Shane Steichen, who helped develop Jalen Hurts into the player he is and helped develop Justin Herbert into the player he is. And also the Colts are pretty much a similar team to the Carolina Panthers. Only they were taking slightly less risky moves when it came to quarterback accusations. Not accusations. Signing quarterbacks. Acquisitions. They made slightly less risky moves in quarterback acquisition, whatever it is. Signing quarterbacks. You get my point. They'd signed guys like Matt Ryan. They'd signed Carson Wentz. They signed Phillip Rivers. Guys who, were good, but not, at the time at least, but not anything spectacular. They kept trying to hold on to the glory days that maybe they could win post-Andrew Luck, and it just wasn't worth it. So they made the right move. They're rebuilding. They signed a highly talented guy who, if he develops, A, there's not as much pressure because he was taking number 4, and B, they're a rebuilding team. There's not going to be much pressure to win at all. And they have a great offense, what appears to be a decent offensive coordinator who's helped develop some of the most gifted quarterbacks in the NFL right now. So, I love both of these moves by both teams. The Eagles drafted Jalen Carter last night at number 9, and boy, that is a great pick considering the fact that he was considered by many to be maybe the best player in the draft. He certainly has one of the highest upsides. He's a great pass rusher. He's got off-the-field concerns. But even still, this pick right here is what makes the Philadelphia Eagles just so good. This is just amazing. Last year they had 3 first-round picks, traded one of them for A.J. Brown, and that move was pretty crucial to them, making their Super Bowl for the first time since 2017. And this year, they had 2 first-round picks because the Saints, traded with them last year to move up to select Chris Olave. And it's just utterly amazing because usually when you see teams trade a first-round pick for a guy and make the Super Bowl, they generally don't do well afterward. Like, the Kansas City Chiefs are the example I'm going to use here, along with the Rams. Kansas City traded a first-round pick back in 2020 for Orlando Brown Jr., of the Baltimore Ravens. They traded for him so that he could fill in at the left tackle spot, and it was a great trade as it helped Kansas City move their way back into the Super Bowl for a second straight appearance to face Tom Brady. Now, they got absolutely destroyed in the Super Bowl by Tom Brady, and because they didn't have a first-round pick that year, they couldn't select a high-impact player. And obviously teams who want some of that Super Bowl magic sign players away from Kansas City. And even though they didn't make a Super Bowl, they didn't make the Super Bowl next year as Joe Burrow decided to, have lights out in the second half against the Kansas City Chiefs, and the entire Bengals team pretty much did. And the Los Angeles Rams did the same. They traded 2 first-round picks for Matt Stafford. They won a Super Bowl. And now look at them. They're absolutely horrendous. I mean, they had the worst season of any team after winning a Super Bowl. Yet Philadelphia, it doesn't seem like that's going to happen to them. Yeah, they made the Super Bowl, and they lost it. And yes, they lost a lot of key players. I mean, Javon Hargrave is a huge loss. They were signed by the 49ers. There were a bunch of other losses. And obviously and they traded a first-round pick last year to get A.J. Brown. Yet this year, things are going to be different. Most teams will not have a first-round pick by this point. The Eagles have 2. I mean, that's just unbelievable. I mean, I remember when everyone thought Howie Roseman was a fool of a GM. I mean, just the fact that he failed on Carson Wentz after a little bit, them drafting Jalen Hurts, it seemed crazy. Why would you do that? And now he looks like an absolute genius. I mean, how on earth do the Eagles go from a team who makes the Super Bowl, loses it, and for most teams that would be horrible because A, because a bunch of coaches left, and B, a bunch of players are going to leave because teams want the high players because there's a reason that they made the Super Bowl. Those players played well. And now, if most other teams in a situation, they would be dealt with a late draft pick. They'd be picking some other guy, or they just wouldn't have a first-round pick. Not the Eagles. They have 2. And they were able to replace Javon Hargrave with, Jalen Carter, who if that pans out, is a great prospect. This is what makes the Eagles so good and why I think they will dominate this year. The fact that they made the Super Bowl, they lost it. They lost players. They lost coaches. Yet they still have 2 first-round picks, and they still basically reloaded and potentially got even better somehow. That takes some skill. That is very much like Brady and Belichick in the Patriots dynasty, how they would lose tons of players and coaches and yet still be viable after a Super Bowl loss the very next season. That's the kind of stuff that separates you as a GM, as a head coach, as a team. Great move by Philly. Will Levis has fallen out of the first round. Quarterback from Kentucky who was projected to be a top 10 pick with a strong arm, a smart brain, and likes mayonnaise in his coffee. Trust me, I'm still not sure how that works. That just sounds kind of gross. Has fallen out of the first round. And this is a much surprise to everybody because, well, he's projected top 10 pick, obviously. But there was some concerns about him. He's kind of loosey-goosey with the football. He's obviously very much in love with his massive guns. He took a shirtless picture in the bathroom. Apparently it's a horrible thing. I know. Imagine showing off your guns. I mean, just like, why would you even do that? Okay, I haven't done push-ups in a while, so they're not that impressive. But you get the point. But honestly, this is good for Will Levis. I mean, from the comparisons I've heard of him, he's very much like Sam Darnold in that he's, very talented. He's not the head, but does not make the greatest decision. He turns the ball over way too much. And honestly, this is just good for him. Because the problem with Sam Darnold is not the fact that he was coached by Adam Gase. I'm sick and tired of that propaganda. Adam Gase made the playoffs with a healthy Ryan Tannehill. I will not stand for this. Sam Darnold had every opportunity, yet all the media did was shower him with praise and love and, oh, you're so talented. Oh, you're better than Baker. All that crap. And Will Levis does not seem like a guy who has been tested much in his career. And I think this will be a wake-up call for him. I mean, the last guy with the talent of Will Levis, the arm strength, the loosey-goosiness, who fell out of the first round was Drew Lock. Now, obviously, Drew Lock didn't pan out, but that was because Pat Shurmur was a buffoon. Vic Fangio never gave him a chance, and maybe Drew Lock just wasn't good. I doubt that Drew Lock wasn't good. I mean, obviously, he's great, and Seattle's making a mistake by not starting him. But even still, from what we know of Drew Lock, he's not as smart, according to test scores and whatnot, as Will Levis, who has like a 4.0 GPA. He did really well in the Wonderlic test, probably. I don't know. I'll put up his Wonderlic score and compare it to others, maybe. And so the fact that Will Levis thought he was going first in the first round, the fact that there was that Reddit post that said that he may be going first overall from a friend of a friend of a friend was obviously fake, and all that. This should humble the man. This should get him to work harder, limit those turnovers, and help him develop into a great quarterback. I mean, if Sam Darnold had fallen out of the first round, he probably would be dominating right now. I think some people just need to be pushed. Their buttons need to be pushed, and they need to learn to straighten up, limit their mistakes, and fix themselves. And I feel like Will Levis is that type of guy right now. He's going to see seeing that all 32 teams have passed on him. Well, not all 32 teams. There are teams that have first-round pick like Denver and LA. But still, teams passed up on him. Use this as motivation. Get drafted by an organization who's going to develop you, work you hard, and with all that, work even harder. And I think this will work out beautifully for Will Levis, and I think this could help him launch his career. Besides, there's still teams that could draft him. I mean, the Lions had the 42nd overall pick. Or is it? They have a really high pick. If I had the Lions, I'd take him. If I were New England, I consider it. I mean, he's a smart guy, big arm. Bill Belichick could probably mold him into something. Be a replacement for Mac Jones. Dallas, if you want to succeed, draft Will Levis. Potentially, you could develop him. I mean, for goodness sake, Mike McCarthy turned Dak Prescott really good, pretty good. He turned Aaron Rodgers, helped him become a great quarterback. He resurrected Brett Favre's career near the end there. That would be a great spot for him. I think that this can only be good for Will Levis. Somebody take this man. The Seattle Seahawks are already a team that really irks me, especially since they traded Russell Wilson. Their fans spat on him. They called him names. They were very mean to a guy who only won them, 9 winning seasons, a Super Bowl, another Super Bowl appearance. And the worst part is they were right about it, as they benefited from the Russell Wilson trade. And it only gets worse, as last night they made 2 great draft picks with the corner out of Northern Illinois, I think, because it's like red and black, who was really good. I don't know. Who seems pretty good. I don't know his name. And not only that, they drafted the Ohio State receiver, Jackson Smith-Njigba, who was projected to be maybe a top 10 pick, maybe a top 15 pick. Yet he fell all the way to pick number 20, where they just fell right in Seattle's lap and they took him. And he's going to be added to a receiving core that already features DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett, that has a great running back core with Kenneth Walker. And they just got better. I thought we'd be living in a time where the Seattle trades Russell Wilson. They go 4-12. They get the 5th overall pick. I guess it'd be 5-12. They get the 5th overall pick. Denver goes, 10-7, makes the playoffs, losing the wild card round. But, Seattle must take a quarterback. And Denver is sitting there pretty, as they have their quarterback, they have their coach, they're primed for a Super Bowl run this year. Yet somehow the opposite has happened. And Seattle is the one. And Denver's the one who ends up with the 5th overall pick, which goes to Seattle. And Seattle themselves go 10-7 and make the playoffs and lose in the wild card round. And have the quarterback and are primed for a potential Super Bowl run, while Denver's left scratching their heads at whether or not Russell Wilson's good. Why does this have to happen? Why? Anyways, congratulations, Seattle. That was a great draft pick. I'm sure he'll help wonders with your receiving core and make Geno Smith great, or you could just start Drew Lock and become even greater. I don't care. Good job. Ruined everything. Hopefully Russell Wilson goes off this year and becomes MVP and comeback player of the year and offensive player of the year and a Super Bowl MVP, Super Bowl winner, breaks Peyton Manning's record for most passing yards and touchdowns and fewest interceptions. That'd be great. That's all I want. Just low expectations. I'm just kidding. I'd take a 9-8 team that makes the playoffs. That's it. That's all I want. Moving on. The Buffalo Bills got a lot better over the draft, as well as their weakness on offense over the years has been tight end. Well, that along with the run game. But they've solved that, as they have drafted Utah tight end, a man projected to go in the top 10, yet somehow fell. A lot of people who fell for some reason. All the way down to number 25, where Buffalo traded up to select Dalton Kincaid, who, from what people are saying, he's a very smart tight end. He can run routes. He should be a impact player pretty early on. Of course, it's always hard to tell with tight ends. They're just a interesting position. Because obviously there are guys like Kyle Pitts who play well in college, seem like one of the greatest prospects ever, yet don't get used on their NFL team. Then you got guys who get drafted in the 3rd round, like Travis Kelce or Mark Andrews, who go on to become great stars. I don't know. You tell me. But Dalton Kincaid, not to be confused with artist Thomas Kincaid, is a great addition to the Buffalo Bills, who have been lacking in tight end, even though Dawson Knox has been pretty good. They do need more firepower. Obviously need running back, but they did need more firepower to help keep up with the Cincinnati Bengals, who have Jamar Chase, not Lamar Chase. Oh my gosh, that'd be a scary combination: Lamar Jackson, Jamar Chase. Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, and Tyler Boyd, and Hayden Hurst and Joe Mixon. Is Joe Mixon still there? Or they cut him yet? I don't know. And obviously Kansas City, who has Travis Kelce and Patrick Mahomes. This is a good move by Buffalo. Should really help them get a new level to complement the already great Gabe Davis and Stephon Diggs. A tough target over the middle to face defenses. It's a really good draft pick. Like, I don't know what more you want me to say. Like, what is there to say? Are sportscasters just trying to read too much into things? Like, are they trying to come up with new clickbaity titles? Why can't we just be, yeah, that was a good pick. Yeah, that was a bad pick. Yeah, that was a good pick. Yeah, that was a bad pick. I don't know. The Houston Texans selected C.J. Stroud with the 2nd overall pick. Good pick. I think. I don't know. Stroud's one that's interesting because it always seemed like he'd be great. He was obviously great at Ohio State. Everyone thought he'd be great, but then suddenly there were reports of him being kind of, well, limited, which is weird because he's 6'4", can run. He played great against Georgia last year and would have gone on to a national championship had the kicker not missed a field goal right as, New Year's Eve, right as midnight struck on New Year's Eve. I don't understand how people thought that he was gonna fall. I don't know. Either way, it seemed like a good pick. Houston probably has their quarterback of the future. It's not the Bryce Young they wanted, but good pick for Houston. But it gets even better as they traded the 1st-round pick next year to the Cardinals to move up 9 spots back to number 3 and select Will Anderson, pass rusher from Alabama, who's considered by many to maybe be the best player in this draft. Obviously not as talented as Jalen Carter, but certainly has a higher floor. He led college football in sacks. That's a great move for a defensive coach. And, DeMeco Ryans on a team that desperately needs defense. Like, badly. I mean, the Texans' defense was horrendous. I mean, if you let Russell Wilson beat you, you're really bad. But, yeah. Now, there are a lot of people saying that this was a terrible trade because Houston gave up their own 1st-round pick and not the Browns' 1st-round pick next year. Like, analytics people say that for this to be successful for Houston, Will Anderson has to turn into a Hall of Fame player. To that I say, you know what? It seems like a good pick to me. I mean, Will Anderson is a great pass rusher, and obviously great pass rushers do generally produce pretty early on. Like, they're players that if you come out well of the draft, you're generally going to do well in the NFL. Like a Von Miller or J.J. Watt or, Khalil Mack, whomever, Bradley Chubb. Guys like that. I think this is a good move. Even though you had to give a 1st-round pick next year, which is not obviously ideal. But you got one of the best players in the draft. You got your franchise quarterback. I think this is a good move for Houston, especially to solidify that defense. I mean, you know how many picks pass rushers are traded for? Remember Khalil Mack was traded for 2 1st-round picks back in 2018? Pass rushers are the 2nd most valuable position in the NFL. You got quarterback, pass rusher, left tackle. Like, that's the hierarchy. This is, if you can go out there, get your franchise quarterback, get your franchise pass rusher, the 2 most important players on the team, yeah, do so. I mean, DeMeco Ryans already seems like a great coach, at least from all the reports and most people. He could be a great coach. Will Anderson is there for 15 years in Houston, producing like crazy. This trade was worth it. Just completely worth it. Love it. This will be all for me today. I thank you very much for watching. This has been Roughing the Passer, the show that has talked football and football and football. There's been no miscellaneous stuff. Thank you very much for watching. Hit the subscribe button if you like my content. Leave a comment below on your thoughts on the draft, who your favorite team is and who they drafted and whether or not you like that. I will see you later. Goodbye.